Morning. There are so many questions about the Bible, whether you believe in it or whether you do not. There's a lot of evidence coming to light about it, and a lot of people argue that it is a history book, which it is. It's a history of civilization of man, basically. Um, my biggest question is, what are we teaching other people? What are we showing them? You have some people out there that have had a lot of bad situations. Maybe they've lived on the streets. Maybe they were addicts. I mean, whatever it is, maybe they were abused. My biggest question and conundrum and trying to live the best I can is that I see the church doing what it should. It is trying to show people how to live, but there's not a lot of confession. There's not a lot of, it tells us to confess, be baptized. It says that we live by the word, every word of the Bible, and our testimony. And part of our testimony, it's not to point fingers at what you've done, but it is to tell other people where you came from so that they have hope and faith in the future. I worry that our church, and I say our church, I mean the church as a whole. I mean the church people. I think that it tells us that we are the temple of the Lord, which we are, meaning that when we house His Holy Spirit or when we know His Word, that we are responsible for every action that we take, whether it's against ourselves or against somebody else. And I'm not exactly sure how to change this situation, but I don't know. I think that people are always going to fear, if you've, in your mind, if you've been a bad guy, or even by civilization's rules and regulations, if you've been a bad guy, a bad woman, there's not a lot of people out there testifying about where they've been and where they are now. People, they get the whole ask for forgiveness finally. They get to that point, and then what? Then just live the best you can. Just live by God's laws. I get that. But in order to make disciples or to give somebody hope, your story has to be told. And it could be that you're a mother and that you went through abuse. It can be that you were a child and you became addicted to alcohol or drugs. It can be a lot of things. Maybe it's not that, everybody says, oh, I don't really have a testimony. Every day you live is a testimony. You may not have been through a lot of stuff, or you may not think that you've been through a lot of stuff, but you keep going every day, and life keeps throwing things at you. That's a testimony. There's people that don't live through drownings, and there's people that don't live through childhood sicknesses. Something as simple as measles or chickenpox. Some people don't live through that stuff. Some people get 5 minutes of a breath and then they die. So your testimony just might be dealing with a bad boss, dealing with inflation. It might be a lot of things. We don't know what your testimony is. But I do know that there's always somebody out there that when you sit and you talk to them, you can say, oh, you went through that too, or, oh, you're going through that too. And that helps that person. It helps them. I know it's really, we think of it as a really weird situation. Years ago, I went to a church and there was a lady and she was going through a lot. Her father was sick, and so she was like the executive whatever of his everything. And they had somebody that had been renting out a place, and the person was trying to do squatter rights, but they basically were demolishing this house that they were in. And you know, you would hear her complain, and a little bit. She complained a little bit for the situation she was going through, very little. But she would come in and she would tell her friends about, different things that were going on. The ladies group, she would tell them. And I understand that at that time she felt very helpless and just very, you know, beaten down. And I told her one time, I said, you know, I think that you're very strong. Um, and a lot of the ladies did tell her that but when she was going through that, she didn't feel strong. She didn't feel um, dignified. She felt very beaten down. She felt like um, everything that she was going through was just one more pile and one more pile. And when she told people, she wasn't telling them. She basically was telling them so she didn't go crazy, because it was just to that point. It was just overwhelming her. And she had no other outlet but to say something to somebody. Um, but it gave other people hope, because she was such a sweet person and such a good person. If you needed anything, she was the first one there trying to make it happen. She was trying to get food for people and trying to get clothing for people. And she didn't look at it like that, though. And a lot of times we don't look at it when we're going through something. Whether we've been through something or we've been the person putting people through something, the only thing we want when it's over with and done is we want to get through it, and you will get through it. But you don't want to speak about it. You don't. And I'm not saying harp on it, but there's always somebody out there that your testimony will help. Um, so I would encourage anyone in the church, or just anyone, period. Um, I would encourage you to help your fellow man some way, shape, or form. And maybe the only way to do that is to talk to them about what you've been through. And do be a little bit cautious. There are people that you can't tell your story to, because they're going to try to use it against you later. That is not on you, that is on them. But you know what I'm saying. There are people out there, true people, that can really, they really can use the encouragement that you now have a job, that you now have a place to live, that you now have a degree, or whatever it is. Maybe that you're now a mom. Maybe you had no inkling to be one, or maybe you had some physical problems, but that you're where you are, because you're a step ahead. You're one step ahead of where you were. You're not where you were yesterday. Just remember you are worthy and you're loved, and that your story is always important to somebody. There is always somebody out there that can benefit from your story. And I know that when I was going through some things, it would have been nice to know that somebody had been there. I know that there were people that had been in my situation, but there wasn't anybody talking about their situation. Remember, you're loved and you're worthy.